Welcome to another episode of That Gopher Hockey Puckcast. This is episode number 28. I am Nate Wells, joined here by Drew Cove of the Minnesota Daily.
Hello there.
And produced by Tom Schreier. I think I just said producer.
Yeah, there was, if you guys watched the Twins game last night, I was there, but I saw a clip where I think it was Bert was having some trouble saying rally.
Really?
All of us, even the pros, have some trouble. Jerusalem also took like the largest swig of soda.
Yeah.
That was
What?
Amazing, dude. That's a lot of liquid at once. I'm just saying.
That's a lot of liquid. Oh, yeah. Tom, who'd you cover the Twins game for last night?
A wonderful website called Zone Coverage.
Really? That's the podcast. We're on the Zone Coverage podcast.
We are.
You know, we're 28 episodes in.
We are.
And Drusev has it down now.
Yeah.
Has it down. Minnesota Daily's next sports editor, currently covering softball,
Yep.
which the Twins could not have played if they played under Big Ten rules. We said that it has to be 28 degrees, right?
Yep.
At the
20
surface.
like,
degrees
yes,
to start the
feel-
game. Feel like 20
yeah.
degrees.
Felt like -5.
Which
in
I
the press box.
know because of Drew. Yeah.
Yeah, Drusev here informing us on that. It covers the Gopher hockey team, which obviously is why he's on the pod. Covers football. Just an impressive young.
And he shows up to a lot of
Thank you.
availabilities for stuff he doesn't even cover.
enterprising journalist.
Yeah, I got the brief. I got the brief yesterday. They got the brief assignment on Marlene Stallings leaving as head coach
Yeah,
of the women's basketball
what
team.
is going on? I thought you said we're going back. We got that NCAA tournament.
She's making a mark on a program that did not have success last year.
Isn't it?
They were 1-17 in the Big 12. Texas Tech Red
Wow.
Raiders.
Didn't Tubby go to Texas Tech? Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He did.
And then he moved to Memphis, and then he got fired, or he decided to leave because
Yeah, he ended up at Texas Tech, but I think it was after he got fired. It wasn't on his own volition.
So
A lot going on in Gopher sports world.
a lot.
There certainly is.
Considering a lot of the sports are just ending right now, but still a lot going on.
28 episodes, Drew. That might have been your best segue. There you go.
Kids
Good
going
job,
pro.
Drew. See, you become
There
Drew.
you go.
By the way, we'll talk more about this at the end. But Drew has a new position at the Minnesota Daily. So
Yeah, I didn't spoil it.
yeah,
at all.
yeah, just not at all. No, we'll get into that more. But yeah, so this is kind of summing up the end of the college hockey regular season. This past weekend, the Frozen Four was here in St. Paul.
Can I toss a grenade? Are you ready for this? Pins pulled. Is the campus going to burn? The fact that wasn't it UMD the team that got in because Minnesota had the 6 losses go against them? I mean,
If people would have been mad, they would have been mad on Saturday.
yeah,
So
yeah, it's not a delayed burn.
No, I went through campus on our way to record here. It still stands.
I was at Jersey Mike's for lunch. It's all is well.
All is well.
All is well. Drew is like, please, Jersey Mike, sponsor this podcast.
I drink your
don't know.
sodas
Yes.
2 gulps at a time.
Tom, how could it's a small straw, Tom? Like I'm not even taking that big of sips. How can you even tell? The cup isn't clear, Tom. This is great for podcast material because I'm holding up the cup.
Yes, you're
to Tom's
holding,
face.
yes, you're holding up a cup that no one can see.
Yep. No one can see what's going on. No one can
Yes.
actually tell when I'm taking a drink. So it's just
Yes,
great
podcasting,
podcast material.
the audio visual.
Yep. And thanks to our 7-minute production meeting.
Yes. But so as Tom mentioned, Minnesota-Duluth, the lone non-Big Ten team, and a team that needed a little help to get into the NCAA tournament
Got
itself.
in by the skin of their teeth.
Yes, they initially could have just needed one team to lose, and then after a couple teams lost, they either needed 1 or 2, and then they needed 6, and they had got the 6 to go in. But they came through. They defeated Ohio State in the semifinals. Michigan and Notre Dame played a fantastic other semifinal where Notre Dame won with about 5.2 seconds remaining. And then Minnesota-Duluth, once again, 2-1 win over Notre Dame to win its second national championship in school history and second national championship won at XL Energy Center.
Yeah, well, I wasn't able to be at most of the first semifinal game against between Duluth and Ohio State, but I saw the third period of that, which was a pretty entertaining third period. I was there for the whole Michigan and Notre Dame game, which was really competitive, and it really, I mean, by the end it got pretty heated, especially when Pastiev scored that goal to tie it up, I think at 3 apiece. And then moving to the national championship game, it was just more of the same for Minnesota-Duluth, which is just kind of bizarre. I don't know how far we want to go into that, but Minnesota-Duluth had they won 4 one-goal games en route to the tournament, and from what I remember looking at is that they were not good at it during the regular season in one-goal games.
No, they've been great at it during the NCAA tournament over the past few years.
Yeah.
But
Jess Myers, by the way, big UMD guy, right? And covers it for. You want to say it or you want me to say it?
Oh, he doesn't cover them for the Athletic.
Oh, does he cover St. Cloud?
No, he just covers he's just a general guy.
Okay.
Minnesota
his kid. I was to say
Gotcha.
one of his kids goes to UMD, and
Yeah, he went there. So I asked. He was in the press. I covered the Twins game last night. He was in the press box.
I ran into him. I ran into him in many different places over the weekend.
Oh, he's the nicest dude ever from like way up north, right?
War
Road. That's
Yes.
right. That's right. Him and Brandon have thrown down Rosa War
Yes.
Road. But no, he was wearing the UMD, and I asked him, and he's like, "Yeah, I met my wife there." Like big ties to the Bulldogs. I do not remember where I was going with this. Now that we had where was I going with this? Anyways,
I don't know, but mark that off your bingo card, folks.
That was the first time we ever said the word athletic, and Tom didn't scream.
Yeah.
Hey, it's coming.
That's the second time.
Anyways, Papa Barry Melrose calling the game. He claimed that Minnesota fans should be rooting for UMD. We talked to Mr. Giles Farrell, I did, who was at the game as a fan. He disagreed wholeheartedly. Where do you guys stand on kind of Minnesota supporting Minnesota here?
I think it's probably easier if you're a Minnesota fan to cheer for Minnesota-Duluth and the other Minnesota schools than Minnesota-Duluth going the other way around for Minnesota.
I see that totally. Or St. Cloud going Minnesota.
Yeah. Or any non like Minnesota Twin City school. Any of the other ones going for Minnesota. I think it's a little easier to go the other way just because of how the balance and power is.
Sure.
But I mean, no, I'm not going to tell anyone to cheer how they want to cheer or anything. So, being there, it certainly Duluth was certainly had a little bit more of a hometown advantage.
Although there's a lot.
You can tell there are a lot of Notre Dame alums. As we kind of saw at the end of January when the Fighting Irish came and played the Gophers at Mariucci. But yeah, it certainly was more of a Minnesota-Duluth fan, especially for Saturday, where there were a lot. I know I was talking to people, and there's a lot of Minnesota-Duluth fans who bought tickets after the Thursday one.
Jess said he wrote for The Athletic. I'm not going to make the noise, Joseph. I'm an adult,
Okay.
and I always have been on this podcast.
Yeah.
I've always been serious. And
Time mark, episode 28.
Episode 28, Tom is an adult.
So Jess, I think, wrote something saying that UMD rebuilt, or it was going to be a rebuilding year at the beginning of the year.
Yeah,
and we were
he
joking
might have
about
did
how
that.
we're like, yeah, they rebuilt pretty quickly. And I think they'd be the darlings of the tournament, right? If it weren't for them being the team, I'm saying for Minnesota fans, if it wasn't the team that basically got in because Minnesota was out.
And and I think enough's kind of passed with that. It's not exactly. I mean, you can also say the other hand, Notre Dame. If you look at some of the other teams, Notre Dame beating Ohio State was one of the things that kept Minnesota out. Like, there's a lot of things that there's a lot of little things that had to fall in line for Minnesota to get out of the tournament like that. And I mean, honestly, Duluth is, if you're going to be playing who did what, like Duluth losing to North Dakota is like the one thing that went right for them.
Yeah, and beyond that, I mean, we talked about how it's 3 Big Ten teams, and the one team that isn't emerged victorious, right? And then, so you would think that Minnesota fans probably have more beef with Michigan, Ohio State, and Notre Dame, right? That's their direct competition. No,
I don't think so. Yeah, Drew. I mean, what do you think?
I sat by. I mean, when I was in seats in the upper deck for all those games, especially the Saturday game was a lot of people wearing. It was maroon and gold, but I had to make sure I looked or just around to sort of see what was on the front of it, and just said Minnesota. A lot of people really into UMD winning the game rather than seeing Notre Dame win. But I thought it was kind of I thought it was a little surprising. I mean, I was seeing Giles' tweets at the same time saying this isn't right, and I was looking and I was like, wow, I was kind of surprised that many Minnesota fans, at least from what I saw, were going to root for UMD. But I guess maybe the the prospect of that many Big Ten teams in it. They weren't too happy with, and I think Minnesota fans are easy to get on Michigan for just not liking them, just because, I don't know, just the sports dominance that is Michigan most of the time.
I've always said that is an underrated hockey rivalry, the Minnesota-Michigan rivalry, and one that we're in year 5 of the Big Ten. I think is starting to at least go more and more. You're seeing it, but at least for me, I've always enjoyed that one. The Gophers have a lot of rivals, in these just in the sense of being the big team for Minnesota, and that being North Dakota and Wisconsin, and just kind of in general, but I've always enjoyed that historical rivalry between Minnesota and Michigan.
Yeah, and other thing at the game at all the games that I saw is that this was a very well attended tournament of people not just in the Twin Cities area. A lot of people would think, the Frozen Four's in town, so that's going to draw a lot of just the casual Minnesota college hockey fans that don't normally go travel. But I mean, in the section I was in, there was a big smattering of Maine fans, which I thought was kind of surprising. A lot of Maine jerseys wandering around. A big BC contingent in our section. A few Minnesota guys around us. I think there was some Ohio State and Michigan alums sitting on one side of us, and then a lot of I think Ohio State alums behind us as well. So there was, for just one section, that was pretty diverse from a college hockey standpoint. And I looked around the arena before both games, and I made sure to point out all the different jerseys I saw. There was Yale jerseys, there was a lot of RIT jerseys, there was BC, Maine.
What's the weirdest one, or one that if you're like, I would not have expected someone to have this?
I wasn't expecting as many Clarkson as I saw. I saw 4 Clarkson jerseys. From what I saw almost, I think one of probably half the teams, and I wasn't expecting 4 from Clarkson. So.
I'd believe that.
Yeah, but
that's one of the nice things about the Frozen Four.
They travel really well.
Everyone travels really well. It's the one event where everyone kind of comes together, and you can make a weekend out of it. It's a destination regardless of who plays in it, and that's kind of the nice thing where I don't think it really matters where it ends up being. Sometimes it's nice to at least have it in your traditional college hockey locales, like here in Boston, going to Detroit, back in Detroit in a couple of years. But you can almost host this one wherever.
Yeah.
So I guess that's what I was going to ask. Do you think any part of it's St. Paul and people want to see it as kind of like a hockey hub, if you will? That West 7th and goes off when the tournament's there, and it is where the Wild plays, and there's history of hockey in Minnesota. Does any of that factor in, or is it truly just the brand of Frozen Four?
First of all, it's St. Paul.
Yeah, right.
How can wouldn't want to come to St. Paul?
Yeah, they didn't even think about Minneapolis. Someone mentioned, you could go see the new Vikings stadium. No, you're right. It is St. Paul and West 7th is fun, but does any of that factor in that it's just like Boston and just like Detroit? It's Minnesota, Massachusetts.
I think Michigan. It does for some people, in that if it's in St. Paul and you're from Minnesota or Wisconsin or whatever, it's a drive and you can make the trip much easier. I also think it goes a little bit in just the fact that they do such a great job in St. Paul hosting the event. It makes you feel like it's a big time event. It kind of takes over that part of the city.
Right.
But other than that, no, I think it's almost you can almost at this point, I think, hold it anywhere, and it's one of the reasons why.
Any major market, or it could be in I
think it should be like a major market, and it should be an NHL arena. They did do it about 8 years ago. Detroit hosted it, and they tried it at Ford Field to try to just kind of get like a stadium of it, and it didn't work that well. So I do think there are limits, but at the same time, I'd say you can almost hold it anywhere, and it almost shows why the Tampa Frozen Fours have been such a success, because you take it seriously, and you kind of just show off, this is our event, this is our hometown, this is our locale, please enjoy it and everything.
Tampa, underrated, non-traditional market, right?
Tampa is, it is. But they put everything into it. There's certainly a difference, and it was in Chicago last year, and Chicago's a good one, but no one event is going to take over Chicago. It's just too big of a city. It's too big of a city for that to happen. So,
and even to kick it off, they kicked it off in conjunction with St. Patrick's Day. So if you wanted to come down, you couldn't make the end of it. If you just wanted to come down for the tournament, you could be like, hey, I can knock two stones, hit two birds with one stone, right? It seemed like there was a lot of people. Were you guys downtown? I can't remember for St. Patrick's Day.
No.
Okay. I just saw a lot of jerseys.
But no, St. Patrick's Day was like before the tournament.
Was it before? Oh,
Yeah.
Maybe that was the NCHC.
Yeah.
My bad.
NCHC.
Sorry.
All right.
I was close.
I was really confused for a second.
No, you're right. It was the end of the NCHC. Never mind. Sorry,
All right.
podcast listeners. Oops.
No, but
I'm embarrassed.
I'd say though, but
I'm not really.
the couple, they're not really. I'd say there are probably two big takeaways though that I had from this weekend's Frozen Four on the ice, and I don't know what order I want to go in, but I'd say number one is I'm not surprised Duluth won, just because really at this point, and just how this year has gone, it's a year where really there's so much parity. Like no one separated themselves as being the team or the team. It's funny, kind of in a way that Minnesota-Duluth last year, them, Denver, and Harvard to an extent kind of separated themselves, and were like for like the entire second half and much of the season, you'd be like, these are the three best teams in college hockey, and then Minnesota was kind of part of that next tier of top teams. But like I think if you go on paper, last year's Duluth team was tons better than this year's team. That won the national championship. But the way that this season's gone, and how many teams have had upsets, or just how many teams have been able to beat one another, it felt right that you have the last at large bid and a 3 seed, a 3 seed that won the regional, that had bad losses in the conference tournament, and this is all the similarities to 2011, in the same arena, in the same locker room, and everything that they did, that they were able to win it. But like, it felt right but at the same time, it shouldn't. There's no surprise. There's no surprise that they won it, and that the last team, large team, won it, because it's just the third time in 6 years that's been the case. But if there ever needs to be anything to point at and say that, well, this is college hockey. If you're in the tournament, any team can win. Just point at this stretch and be like, this is how it is.
Yeah, and there's one thing that I noticed about Duluth, especially coming in and just watching those 3 games, just those 4 teams. The one team that stood out the most aggressively was Duluth. And especially you saw it on the forecheck, you saw it on the back check, you saw it just without the puck, the tenacity to get it back was Ohio State couldn't match it. That's why, they were pinned in their own zone and they were forcing passes. They were making bad turnovers. And they did then Duluth came and did it against Notre Dame the next day. And it was just kind of, you didn't really, I didn't really expect that coming from Duluth, especially for such a defensively sound team like Ohio State that could break it out. And once their forwards got it, their forwards had a really tough time getting anywhere where they could make any difference. And they did the same thing against Notre Dame. They really they pressured them and made them really uncomfortable in their style of play. And I think that's ultimately what got them the win. And they obviously put that together right when they needed to. And
yeah, they gave up an even strength goal in the first 2 minutes against Minnesota State. After that, they didn't the entire time. They're a tough team to play once they have a lead, and that was certainly the case on both sides for both Frozen Four games. But yeah, they won. They kind of just showed a pattern that when Minnesota has played well against Notre Dame and Ohio State and Michigan, that they were doing it where they're getting up early and they were playing teams that just were not able to get back the other way around. So you can kind of, in a way, like you can kind of see like how Minnesota, they can kind of just showcase the sign of similar ways of how when Minnesota is successful, how these teams are, how they're able to find success.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously playing with the lead's a lot better than playing when they're down. But, Minnesota-Duluth really exemplified that in both weekends. They got out to the quick lead, and they didn't fall into a defensive shell. They still played aggressive, but, they really just, once they got that lead, they just stymied the other opposing offenses, and that's obviously what they need to do. They had a good performances from Shepherd, even though they limited the shots in both games. They seemed like pretty low scoring, low shot affairs. So Shepherd didn't have to face a ton, but when he needed to be up to the task, Hunter 2.0, I don't know for the Bulldogs he was there to make the saves.
Yep. And the second big takeaway from the weekend is that that was the weekend that the Big Ten needed just to. We kind of touched on it a little bit before the Frozen Four, but just getting the 3 teams and. Fair or not, it's not the NCAA tournament doesn't always consider who the best team is. The best team doesn't always win the NCAA tournament, but reputations are made in the postseason, and I think the Big Ten did what they needed to do after just having an entire season of believing that we're the best conference. We have a lot of depth in our conference from 1 to 7, and we have 5 of the top 13 teams in the country, and I think they showed. I think they showed it earlier in the season in non-conference play, and I think they backed it up in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, if you look at, especially, I mean, I think about the way Ohio State's been the last year or so, when it seems like they've been overlooked by a lot of the rest of the country, and how people don't realize how good they are. I think this finally solidifies them to where Ohio State's not going to be overlooked next year, and then people are going to go in expecting, and they're going to realize that Ohio State's a really good team, and they're not a team people are going to sleep on again this year.
Yeah, and it's certainly having that win over Denver the way they did to get to the Frozen Four. Yeah, certainly anyone who's sleeping on Ohio State is not been paying attention to college
hockey. Do you
hockey.
think it affects their own attendance too? I feel like Ohio State would not be accepting of when your football team is a premier program, right? And the basketball team is at least a competitive Big Ten team year after year. It just seems like they're going to only get on board if the hockey team is routinely good.
It's kind of been a weird thing of I've been to Ohio State, and they have a large fan base for college hockey, but as far as it goes, just kind of as a university, they don't get the attention that they should. Like if you look at just the media and their Columbus Dispatch or whatever, they're very small, little recaps.
Right.
They send people there. They got a lot more attention this year for the run, and I hope that certainly helps. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, the biggest thing that Ohio State needs, besides a run like this, which will certainly help get attention and spark interest in the program, is they got to get out of the basketball rink.
That's what you said, and I wonder if sustained success, if they're tied together. Sustained success means it justifies putting a rink on campus.
I could certainly see something like that. Where if you continue the success, and they return a good amount of people, or they should at least. From this year's team. They did the same for last year, but the last 2 years have probably been their best 2-year stretch in, 15, 20 years. But so for me, those are my 2 big takeaways. Yeah. Drew, any takeaway that I didn't touch on?
Not really. I just know, I noticed that one difference that Minnesota-Duluth was just playing aggressively out of their minds. Also, yeah, I think you really just touched on it. That the Big Ten really did put themselves on the map there there are advocates that have been obviously very pro Big Ten prior to now, and they've always been the anti-Big Ten people. But also, there's no denying that the Big Ten is on par with the NCHC at this point. That they can send 3 teams to the Frozen Four, and still not be blown out in any of those games, obviously, but to have a game that's internally Big Ten to get to the semifinal to get to the final, and it's still very close, very competitive. Old school kind of hockey.
For college hockey fans, we've been really blessed for some great finishes in that night game over the last few years. Where
even just talking to Jess, I felt like generally the tournament was solid. I know Ryle suffered it, but St. Cloud early exit, right? And a lot of kind of these teams that ended up winning. It's this young, exciting Duluth team. It's Notre Dame constantly in the last second pulling out a win. There's some rivalries that probably were enhanced or started through this tournament. It seems like kind of you got what you asked for as a hockey fan.
Yeah, and it kind of just showed off how the rest of the season has been, where there's a lot of games you wouldn't be surprised where either team wins any of the results. Where you have the number 1 overall seed get upset in the very first round. You have a 3 seed win the entire tournament. You have a team like BU come very close to making the Frozen Four after basically having to win about 9 of their last 10 games to make the to make it, and then they had to make 9 of their last 10 games to basically get in position to win the Hockey East and get that in there. So there's so much going around. I thought it was a really good representation of college hockey this season. I mean, and by the way, if you're listening to this and you're a Gopher hockey fan and being like, wow, they've talked a lot about college hockey, not Gopher hockey, don't worry, we're going to switch gears and get into that a little bit. Not really too much. Yeah. We kind of joked during last week.
That's our time peg piece, the first part of the podcast here.
Yeah, we kind of joked a little bit about last week about, well, what news is going to break or whatever right after we record. And you know what? The news was that nothing broke.
Yep. First time, almost had the turkey, but not this time.
I mean, you can kind of count you guys. Well, you weren't on it because there's an age limit, but... Just kidding. Although it was at Tin Whiskers. Are you allowed to go to Tin Whiskers?
I don't know. I've never been there.
I think you can bring kids to Tin Whiskers. There's like games in there. So.
I don't.
Really?
Tom, that's something that you'll have to figure out.
Yeah, I'll have to figure out.
His own coverage.
You were on the Giles and the Goalie podcast.
I was.
And I told Giles that you said to his face, you're like, yeah, you're not that famous. And I'm like, God, it became a mess. But they threw down. You should have seen they were on the table just throwing punches. But anyways, Nate got mad at me pushing Giles and the Goalie on this podcast all the time. I'm sorry. But.
I said this last week on the show too. But no, it's you say it like everyone listening knows who it is, and you don't explain who they are. So
everyone knows Giles. Everyone knows Giles. Ben Remington hosts Giles and the Goalie. We did at Tin Whiskers, and of course, this big news comes out after that podcast is released that not only Ryan Suter out for the playoffs, but has this injury that if he was playing another sport, he might be done. Right? I mean, like that's your trifecta right there. That was.
This is also something we talked about last week too.
Hey, we got to reinforce it for people like me that have no memory. we have to reinforce it.
I wonder why.
After just saying for people who probably who maybe listen for their first time. That you have to reiterate it. Reiterate that we also talked about last week's show for people who do and are like.
For anyone new to this podcast, not you. I say things that I've said last week and have no recollection of that. I apologize, people.
Yeah. Anyways, so no news really broke on the Gopher hockey front. They haven't announced Bob Motzko has announced his assistants.
Mm-hmm.
A couple things with recruiting. They did pick up their first commit of the Bob Motzko era in Edina forward Mason Nevers.
Bob's first Edina.
Which I kind of thought was there has to be a little bit of symbolism there for a coach who pretty much avoided Edina during his time at St. Cloud, going there and picking up a place where Minnesota has at least recently kind of made their home with the Edina players. That's been a good pipeline for them. They kind of took over a little bit for Notre Dame. Notre Dame had a few Edina guys too. I was talking to them during those. Momquest, Bo Brower. Fishing extraordinaire. I got it right. That was my lead for my article on that one. Was just it was just like oh god. So talking to him. So I'm talking to him. Do you guys know the on the bench people?
I do not, unfortunately.
No.
I think they kind of are trying to be like the modern Hanson brothers or whatever, and going and be like very stereotypical hockey folk.
Oh, yeah, no, I know who they are.
Okay, so they did that.
Sorry.
So they came in.
I've seen their videos. I never knew their name, I guess, then.
All right, I think that's it. I might be wrong with what it is. But they came in and we're talking and like broke up like the conversation or whatever and going back and was like, all right, well, I'm like, well, sorry, this is not going to be as interesting as that one. But we're talking and then they bring up the fishing and he's just like, his face just lights up. And then we talk about fishing for like 5 minutes, which is very Minnesotan.
Yep. Yeah.
He's a guy. So you'll enjoy this stuff. So him and a couple other athletes started a club bass fishing team.
That sounds about right.
About right. Yeah.
Is that a thing? I gotta do some digging.
In South Bend, you actually get the fish you get in the Simpsons that have 3 eyes. It's a great catch. I wouldn't eat it though.
Yeah. So it was like one of the guys got like a boat. Is like his graduation present was there for like a 5th year.
Wow.
Of eligibility, and they're like, let's go do it. Let's start up a team. So they started up a team.
That sounds like a really University of Minnesota kind of thing.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I should see.
Doesn't that be ice fishing?
Who would of the current Gophers be like the one most likely to start that?
Jack Ramsey.
It would be sounds like it's Jack Ramsey.
No hesitation whatsoever.
I almost started that as
honestly.
I'm
like I hear you asking the question.
Ramsey.
Like I wonder if he's going to say Ramsey. Like I'm pretty sure. No, Jack Ramsey would be the guy.
It'd be if Jake Bischoff had another year of eligibility, he would join him. But yeah,
he'd come. He'd quit. He'd quit hockey. Come up and. come back and enroll for graduate school or something, and
exactly, yeah,
be on the bass fishing team.
Yeah, not even. It's not even close. It'd be. It's like it's. Yeah, I was like asking this question. I was like, no, there's the obvious answer. We know who it is. Mm-hmm. But, where was I going with this?
I think we were probably going to get to the alums in the NHL. That's one thing we're going to get to.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about the alums in NHL.
Last time we recorded, I think that we were 23, and a week from then, now there's 3 more. They have 26, I believe, made their debuts in the NHL, or at least appeared in the NHL for at least one game this season. I
believe it's 7 made their NHL debut.
Oh, okay, yeah. And the ones that are Adam Wilcox, former goalie, he made his debut for the Buffalo Sabres he got credited with a loss, but he didn't give up a goal.
Yes, very coxy way to get in there. I did enjoy. One of my favorite things of the week was on Twitter was Minnesota's SID Brian Deutsch just having every time Buffalo would play, just doing the hashtag putting coxy.
Yeah.
But so 26 this season. Yeah, seven players made their NHL debut this year. Starting Travis Boyd, Justin Hall, Justin Klutz did it with the Wild, Nick Seeler did it with the Wild, Vinny Lettieri with the Rangers, and then Casey Middlestat and Adam Wilcox both with Buffalo.
Yep, a lot of Gopher alums there on the Buffalo team. They got Middlestat, Okposo, and now Wilcox too. And in the past, obviously, there's been Vanek. They drafted him right out of the Gophers. So big and
they got Hudson Fashion in the system as well.
Yeah, he's either in the minors or sometimes up at the pro club. But yeah, he's a big Gophers to Buffalo pipeline, that's for sure. Yeah,
they certainly are fans of the Gophers there, and
no matter who's the GM, like there was Darcy Regier, and then now Jason Botterill,
Michigan man.
Not really changing their.
No,
their,
his first pick. His first pick is Casey Middlestat. So
yep.
It's not that. It's the case. The 26 NHL alums is tied the known NCAA record. Boston College had 26 in 2014. So it's kind of a thing that just shows the players developing, the players, especially because you can kind of see a mixture of those guys that we're mentioning who make their NHL debut. You've got Casey Middlestat, like 8th overall pick. Of course, he's there, he's in there, and then you have someone like, and you have someone like a Justin Klutz or a Vinny Lettieri who go undrafted and work their way through 4 years and make it the next year. And then someone like a Nick Seeler or a Travis Boyd who are kind of later round picks who spend a couple years in the minors and work their way to it.
A couple of questions for you regarding this, like kind of the NCAA to NHL pipeline. I know in the NFL, it's sometimes better for players not to get drafted because they can choose which team to go to and they're kind of recruited. So of the 3 routes, and I'm talking later picks, is it better to be a later pick that kind of where you're going and there's some security in that? Is it better to be kind of the college, what do you call that, like the Cody Almonds and stuff that come in as
the undrafted free agent?
Yeah, the undrafted free agent. Is it better to be the undrafted free agent, or is it better to be someone like Louis Belpedia, who I think could leverage... He was able to leverage the fact that the Wild didn't have rights to him after this year, right, to get that, to start his contract or something like that. Which route do you think is best for the players?
Yeah, it seems. I think it really depends on how the player performs in the end of their college career. Because it was beneficial to a guy like Vinny Lettieri, who had a pretty decent senior year scoring 20 goals, and then he was able to get a contract because he was one of the more desirable guys out there, so now he got to really choose where he went rather than being a sophomore and having that kind of year and then just saying, I could go pro to the blank, or I stay here and there's no banking on that success coming again. That's the problem. That's why a lot of those guys, I think, take those jobs. But also you have a situation where you're Tyler Sheehy. You had your career year last year, and he's undrafted. And I would think that if he has a year like this year or last year in between that, he'll get signed somewhere. But it's still a little bit less security there to get the job. But you could also pull a move like Mike Riley did when he was drafted by the Blue Jackets, and he stayed here. He stayed at Minnesota long enough to let that.
Expire.
Yeah, their rights to him expire, and then he decided to choose where he wanted to go. But he had to determine that leverage from a playing standpoint that he was good enough to warrant that kind of to warrant a sweepstakes, which I mean it ended up being that between like the Wild and the Hawks. Now he's on the Canadiens, obviously, but yeah, there's a couple different routes they could take, but I think I don't know. I would think the security of having a landing spot to further your career there would be ideal, but. I'm not a D1 hockey player
or an agent or
I thought you were Mikey Riley, actually.
Yeah.
I thought you joined this podcast.
Oh yeah, sorry. The Canadians are out. I'm filling in. You got me. Drew's actually at class right now.
Because the money is the same no matter what with your the money is the same no matter what is for like your entry level contract. The only things different are like signing bonuses and everything like that. The only thing I think would be is that's beneficial for being an undrafted free agent. I think it's a little bit more if you ask, you're like, would I rather be a 7th round NHL draft pick or undrafted, and then I get to choose myself? I think maybe in that case, it's a little better to be undrafted, and then you have your choice of teams. You have your you can kind of use you can have a little bit more leverage as opposed to being like a 7th round NHL pick where it's like, you know what, we let you it's here's the money, you can play for us. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the two thoughts I have there is, first of all, it's your first impression in the NHL, and we know that if a player's popular, in college and goes to the NHL ranks, immedially people either go, he's up to snuff or he's not. And then the second thing is who's blocking you, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like that's you have your options. You can see the landscape. And
I love how Cody Allman was that even a college guy?
I don't think he was, to be honest. No, you're thinking like
I'm like, why would you choose obscure Wild players from?
You're thinking like of you could use Nate Prosser since he's still there. Casey Wellman.
Casey Wellman, I think, is who I was thinking of.
Yeah, he was a Michigan guy, and then the Wild signed him, and then he did not pay him.
Yeah, I interviewed him when I was in California because he was from
the Internet Ticker. Not only is he not a college guy, but he was a Wild draft pick.
So Tom, you didn't just miss the boat there.
So I'm 0 for 3 here. I've brought up something that we said on the last podcast. I mixed up the NCHC tournament and the Frozen Four.
Yeah.
And because now that I think about it, it's like they don't play the whole tournament in St. Paul. And then I stated that. Yeah. Damn it.
Afternoons aren't good for Tom.
No, not at all. Not at all. I apologize, listeners.
Yeah.
Candles. I'm sorry, Candles.
Yeah.
I'm bummed. I didn't get to see Candles.
No,
at the
I'm bummed
Frozen
too.
Horror. It didn't work out.
I was going to go with Riles, but Riles forgot to get tickets.
Yeah.
So blame Riles. Candle. He did.
He forgot because St. Cloud wasn't in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, who do you think would be the next Gopher alum to make their NHL debut?
That's already in a team's system, or I'm not too. I gotta say I'm not that familiar with a lot of the Gophers prospects that are in and how they're doing, I guess, in terms of the depth chart of all those NHL teams. But if someone were to leave the Gophers today, I would think the next closest person to making their debut would either be Tyler Sheehy or Tommy Novak. That's obviously not saying they have not departed early. That's not.
No, they have not.
In case someone just started listening now, they're not departed. As of right now, they're not departed early. So, but they seem the most ready to be there. Rem Pitlick might be on the fringe of that, I would think, because he can score, but he'd probably just still need to.
The issue when you're talking about those two and like at Gates or whatever.
Yeah,
actually,
Gates would be a good.
Those are all. They're all on teams where they have a lot of depth up there. So
yeah, that's the problem with. That's why I hesitate to say Novak because he's. I mean, the Preds.
Well, I was going to say I was going to go with Rand Lindgren's the answer because it's a rebuilding team.
I guess he hasn't. He's there, but he hasn't.
Yeah,
that's the one I'd probably say. I'd say that. And I was then Sheehy.
Trying to come up with somebody who's a Gopher alum that is there that has not made their NHL debut yet, because a couple of the obvious ones just did this year. There's not any good. Yeah, they're not. Yeah, Lindgren for sure is there. Bischoff might be. The aforementioned Jake Bischoff is one.
They're probably going to make a lot of moves, getting rid of some of those contracts they didn't like in Vegas there, and I think he's at the top of the pool of Chicago.
Yeah, he had a good year.
He'd be the first to come up.
Yeah, he had a good year in Chicago.
Yeah. Be like that Nate Schmidt type way back when he was with the Capitals, where he was the first guy to get called up, and he would stay there for a little bit, and he would kind of just go back and forth.
That's kind of how the Capitals had Travis Boyd this season, where it was. I think he went up about 4 different times, and just he'd go back and forth.
Exactly, but I don't know if you could move on.
Yeah.
'Cause I have a segue that I could use.
Drop it.
Drop it, Drew.
Joseph.
You know what? Well, Travis Boyd is actually throughout his multiple trips from Hershey to our nation's capital, he's there now, and he's one of the 10 Gophers set to make an appearance in the Stanley Cup.
Bravo.
playoffs.
What a stud.
Bravo.
And I mean you,
28 episodes, and Drew is bringing the set.
28 episodes, and Drew's getting better. I'm getting worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's fine. It's fine. It's finally all coming together.
Nate just shook his head in disgust at me. In disgust.
Yeah. So, listing them off. Mark Alt, not with the Philadelphia Flyers like he was most of the season. A deadline deal sent him to the Avalanche.
Mm-hmm.
He will. He'll be at least on the roster for the Avalanche in the playoffs. For Travis Boyd, like we mentioned before, he'll be up there for the Capitals. Eric Halla, obviously monster year with the Vegas Golden Knights. He's one of their top forwards. He's going to be in the playoffs. Eric Johnson, he's injured, but is technically on the roster of the Colorado Avalanche.
One of my favorite things for the Gopher hockey Twitter, which sometimes can go against the Minnesota hockey.
Yeah.
Is when the Wild played the Avalanche a couple years ago in the playoffs, and Johnson made this really great play and either scored or just saved the goal, and they were like, "Great job, I go for Eric Johnson," and the entire comments were just like, "Boo, boo, what the heck, Gopher hockey?"
Yeah.
And they're like, "Hey."
Next up, Phil the Thrill Kessel,
The only 2-time Stanley Cup winner among Gopher alums.
Wow. There you go.
As a player, obviously Badger Bob has.
Tries hard, loves the game.
Yep.
Both with the Penguins, right?
Yep.
Both of those two separate guys, and 20 years apart, both won them with the Penguins in back-to-back years.
Yes.
That's crazy. So Phil's there with the Penguins. Paul Martin back up with the Sharks. He was sent down to the San Jose Barracuda for a while this year.
Chilling with Brodzinski and Sam Warning.
Yep. Down there in
by the way,
Shark
also,
system.
I believe he is not every year. He has not missed an NHL playoffs. He's been in the playoffs every year.
That's bizarre, considering he's been on 3 different teams.
Yeah.
But next, Nate Schmidt, like we mentioned earlier, formerly of the Washington Capitals, now Vegas Golden Knights top pair defenseman. Nick Seeler, hometown Minnesota Wild. He'll be. From what I heard is that he'll be like a third pair guy. He'll be starting, though. He'll be, I think, paired with Prosser, that kind of thing. A Colorado College alum. Thomas Vanek, he is still in the league, if you did not know. He is still in the NHL. He's bounced around a lot lately. I think it was Detroit, then Florida, then Vancouver, and now Columbus.
Yeah, he's been with 4 teams since the start of last year.
He's with hashtag Columbus, and he'll be making his return to the playoffs. I think besides Paul Martin, the oldest player from the Gophers currently in the playoffs. I gotta think so, because who else is still around? Yeah, but just think about it. Like, Paul Martin played when he played for the Gophers from 2001 to 2003. I was between. Here's the bingo. Check off your bingo card. I was between 3 and 5 when he played for the Gophers.
Intrusive.
Yep.
Oh.
Finally, we can't forget, though, Biggie Funk, Mr. Blake Wheeler. Diving goal, Blake Wheeler. He'll be there with the
eliminate
Jets.
The Wild.
Again, he'll be a part of the really intense Winnipeg Jets this year. I don't know. It's going to be a hard series for the Wild to pull off the way the Jets have been playing this year. So,
well, you talked about it. Nick Seeler probably has an opportunity there because Suter's out, right? That's part of it. Yeah.
Like Carson Soucy as well, an esteemed Bulldogs alum.
He was in the building on Saturday.
Yeah, I saw that. He went down to the locker room afterwards.
I saw him. So
yeah, those are the 10 former Gopher players that will be in the playoffs. But it's a pretty wide-ranging group there. A lot between the 2011 and 2013-14 kind of years. I think let's see. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 of the 10 were on that. Were on the team between 2011 and 13. So.
By the way, in 11, the 2012-2013 team.
Yep.
I think they're up with Wilcox now. 11 of those players have made the NHL. Which that I stand by. That is that remains the best team that I've covered. It's the one that had the first round exit DL, but is by far the best, most talented one.
That's like such a, when you look at Lucia through that prism, you're like, how funny is it that he recruited that whole class? He got them where they wanted to go. But you kind of lesson learned. You lose in the first round, people still will freak out.
That's a tough part where,
and maybe rightfully so. You are expected to win.
It is.
Yeah.
I do think, and I kind of hope just over this last few years that the end goal is winning an NCAA championship, but it's not the end all or whatever. It's a tough thing to do. You need a lot of luck. You need a little bit of luck. You need
look at the tournament this year. How many coaches go, hey, Duluth's rebuilding this year, right? And then you see them, and they're like, wait, they're still here? Wait, what?
Well, not only that, but it's you need even they need luck to get in. They needed if who was it? Nick Rivera isn't in the goal and blocks his own shot, they're out of the tournament in the first round. Last year, if Hunter Miska doesn't make like a SportsCenter top 10 save, they're out in the first round. Like, there's so much that can just change the perception of one thing. Notre Dame makes a championship game. If not for a broken stick in the first round, they're out in that and get upset. There's in single game eliminations, there's so much that can change. It's difficult to kind of find that balance between this is a great season that ended short of the national championship and it being the main goal. Like, I think you got to be able to have both. Where it can be disappointing to not win it, but also just to also keep in mind that this was a great year. Like, this is a great year.
Also, a reminder that I know.
And I'm not saying that this year's Gopher team had that.
Yeah.
This is just a general thing.
This is a reminder, and I know I've said this on previous podcasts, but worth going back to. I think this is also evidence of how good college hockey is. Right?
Yeah, we will. I'll agree with that. I just said we, so I'm going to speak with Drew for Drew now. Drew
is like, nobody here is allowed to talk for me.
Talk for me. College hockey's a great game.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah, boy.
It is. Yeah, no, and I'd say the one thing though, and I was going to we can tie this into just kind of get a little bit more of the Gopher stuff. That Duluth got that maybe that you'd want to see for Minnesota next year is down the stretch. They had their seniors play well, and Notre Dame had that happen as well. I can't really say that for the other two teams, but. In the championship game, Duluth only had two senior forwards, and they're the two that scored. They were the two that scored in the games in the Frozen Four, which is a big thing to happen. That wasn't really the case for Minnesota or for Minnesota this season.
Yeah, and I think people will pick apart the broadcast, of course, but especially for Gopher fans who don't want to root for Duluth. But how
was the broadcast, by the way?
I was there. I like both those guys. I forgot. Yeah, you guys both didn't see it.
Yeah.
So I like both those guys, so I can't be entirely objective, but I would say they certainly did their research. I think they did a good job kind of, again, maybe a little overdoing some themes, but they did mention the seniors a lot, and I think that's good direction, especially for people who aren't entirely familiar with it. And I think they just did a good job promoting Drew's favorite city, St. Paul.
Yeah.
And not only that, but kind of coloring not just what's happening in the arena, which still to date feels like a new state-of-the-art facility, full of obviously diehard fans. You said from around kind of the college hockey world, but also the festivities, the stuff that we're emphasizing too, how West 7th comes alive and whatnot. I apologize, Drew, if the internet's down, and we will correct this.
Yes.
All good. Yeah, but I think the Frozen Four definitely did a good job of I guess bringing college hockey to all these different places. I think it's back, Tom. I think it just got back.
I fixed it.
You just did?
I fixed it. Yep.
Dang it,
I got you, boy.
Gosh, Tom is back.
This is what the listeners of the podcast want to hear.
Wow, yeah.
Our Wi-Fi issues.
Exactly. No, I was trying to look something up, but now I forgot what it was. So, yeah, I mean, the Frozen Four was very, very entertaining weekend. Yes, obviously, promoting St. Paul. That's always great. At least from my point of view, it's always great. But yeah, it was a fun weekend. I mean, especially with the quality of the games that were played. And now, I guess Gophers fans can more pay attention to next season or the playoffs, and they can root for their 10 former players to being in the playoffs.
They'll have that, during the Stanley Cup run. Yeah, they'll have that. They'll have that starting off on Wednesday with the Wild and Jets.
Yep.
people on both sides of that. They'll have that. That's going to kind of tide things over until draft at the in the end of June.
Yep.
Then it's summertime. Then Minnesota comes back end of September, beginning of October. I believe they're going to start the year off. I believe they're going to be for the second straight year starting in Duluth, or at least they'll be Duluth. I don't remember if they start in Duluth.
Another early season start, right?
Yeah,
format of the Big Ten.
Yeah, I don't remember if they start. I don't remember if it's the Open Duluth or if it's just their Duluth first game and they open at Mariucci. But that game should be home and home. They have that. They'll play North Dakota in Las Vegas at the end of October. You got the entire Big Ten play going on. They'll go out to Clarkson, St. Lawrence. It should be a fun year. Bringing back some. They got some good players coming back. They got some good ones coming in with Blake McLaughlin, Sammy Walker. I'll probably have at least one more defenseman that's going to have to come in at some point or another.
Yep.
That hasn't that to be recruited, I guess.
To be recruited, yeah.
It's the exact, That's kind of a funny thing where a lot of this talk's been about over-recruiting in college hockey, which is certainly a big issue, but Minnesota's at a point where they don't have enough defensemen that are ready. They literally need another defenseman. Which, that's kind of a good segue to something I got asked by Eric Olson at Forest Gopher about, provided this. Okay, there we go. He asked me about this that I said I'd address in the podcast. He wanted a Gopher-centric question related to Motzko and what he brings to the U. And it's, what is the perception of his player development capabilities? How many garnered unprecedented draft attention under his coaching during their time at St. Cloud?
From what I've seen of his time at St. Cloud is that a lot of his guys stay a while and that he really develops them to become NHL-ready players and physical players and good older college hockey players. So I think the risk of players leaving too early might be, obviously Minnesota's a different animal than St. Cloud. But I don't know how much that's going to change with players leaving maybe before they think they're ready or for how when Bob thinks they're ready to go. But he's definitely going to get, like he said in the press conference, they're going to get there. He's going to make it a very physical, more physically branded team, and they're just going to be really aggressive, that kind of thing. They're going to be built like the 24-year-olds that you saw on St. Cloud's roster for a lot of the last couple seasons.
Is this what Gopher fans want to hear? Wasn't the criticism with Lucia he almost recruited too well and there wasn't enough grinders?
There's a lot of. It doesn't matter either way.
That was a narrative though, right?
There's so many different ones. That's the problem. It's It's either they're not. It's either they're a bunch of glamour queens that aren't. They don't have any grinders or whatever, or they aren't getting the stars that they should be, and they're going to other schools. And somehow those are both simultaneous. Which
the one risk in saying this is that if he misses recruits, they'll be like, well, he doesn't have enough skill to play fast or whatever. That's
that's just one of the things that happens when you come to Minnesota and you get the attention.
Win.
You can't. It's a tough thing. You only win when you do. But I think there's a couple different guys who really show what Motzko has done in his recruiting, where he's got a lot of guys that are maybe a little bit later in the development, but are kind of just showing what they can do towards and have developed at like 17, 18 and can come in like that. Some guy like a Mikey Izemont who wasn't drafted his first year, who went in undrafted. He got passed over his first time, goes in, has a great freshman season, and gets drafted then and kind of continues to follow it up. Or like a Will Borgen who really kind of turned it on his senior year of high school, and maybe they had to bring him in a year earlier just because he developed so well. And he's good at finding kind of those diamonds in the rough, those juniors and seniors. And honestly, that's another thing I like that they pick up Nevers as his first commit, who is a guy who played on a really good line with Sammy Walker, who he just mentioned, but is I believe he's going into his senior year. So he's a guy who you think is maybe kind of getting on the up and up and is developing well. Is not maybe one of like recently where you're getting a lot of guys who are going to be freshmen, sophomore in high school, which is kind of just, there's been a lot of early recruiting in college hockey, but you're getting a guy like that who is developing well and isn't just like an early and just wasn't the best at his age at 15 and 16.
I hope that answers your question.
Yes.
It does. Thank you.
Good.
Yeah, so there's that, and even that, and then I think there's also, you can see guys like Johnny Bradzinski or so, like, who are kind of like mid-late round picks who are also developing well for Matsko, and that's so he's been able to do that. That's kind of what you want. Minnesota's had a bit of that too with just the players that they've come through. So I think they'll continue with Matsko. So
Yeah.
that was a great question, Eric. I just wanted to answer
definitely.
it because he asked on Twitter, and I was like, I kind of need to discuss this one out, and
Yeah.
It's
why we have the
180.
pod.
This is why we have the pod.
Exactly.
It is. All right. Well, Drew, thank you for doing this for 2 years together.
It's been a lot of fun.
As a beat
I'm glad,
writer.
I'm glad
Yes.
we've been able to work this out no matter where we are. So it's been a lot of fun so far.
And you are, as of this week, you were the new sports editor of the Minnesota Daily.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Got interviewed last week and already starting interview process, figuring out what we're going to do for the summer. I take over in a little over a month, so it's a big, fast process. We got to make sure we figure it all out because I think just about all leadership is changing over there. And that's not like a not normal thing. It does that every year, just in case.
They all left.
And just in case
They're like,
anybody,
Drew got it? No.
I hope people don't think that the Daily, the entire management's changing. What's going on at the Daily? No, that's what happens every April, May. So that should be a lot of fun. It's definitely a pretty big challenge, but I'm up for it, and I hope everyone can continue to follow me there and follow the whole sports desk stuff. So it'll be a lot
I
of
hope
work
if you
done
learned
by a lot of
anything over
people.
these last 2 years, it's just to do whatever the opposite of what like we're doing.
Gosh.
He's like, yeah, that dude Tom.
He's like, yes.
The opposite of that guy.
I gotta remember what goes on in the pod. That's what I know I have to do now.
Yes. But no, congratulations. I was really happy to see you get that.
Thank you.
Sent you a nice little message there, and it's very well earned, and we're very happy to see you in that position and continuing to be the young prodigy of Minnesota sports, right?
Still goes
Thank
to
you.
Jersey Mike. Still comes on our little podcast.
Yeah.
Same old Drusif, even with his big old position.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got it. I love the pod, and I love Jersey Mike. So
I'm shocked Drew got through this whole year with me. I promise
Really?
Declan will produce some more. We'll alter.
I ran into Declan ran into my girlfriend and I mean he was there for the Frozen 4, but I ran into him
he was hopping around
at St. Paul.
Yeah.
Ran into St. Paul.
Declan was
and it was
hitting on
funny.
his
So
girlfriend. That's what happened.
no,
That's what happened.
no, he came up. I said hi, and we're talking or whatever. And my girlfriend asked afterwards. She's like, that's the one guy you podcast with. I was like, yeah, he is. And she's like, and I was like, not Drew because he's not around at the moment.
Yeah. True. Yeah.
I'm like, it wasn't Drew, it was the other one. But yeah,
Definitely.
Yeah.
all right. So you can follow Drew at Cove Drew.
Yep.
Tom at T Schreier 3.
Went out with my worst performance of the year. I apologize, but no, it's been fun. I appreciate you guys coming on the network. I appreciate you putting up with my goofiness.
Yeah.
And I can kind of say the same with Wells. There's a lot of times Wells gives the eye roll and the head
Oh, the
shake
East
and
Coast Elite comments.
The East Coast Elite commentary.
That was. Yeah, there was a time where that was intense.
Drusif coming into his own, big time sports editor, no longer a teenager.
Yeah, no.
Yep.
A lot of things changed in the last few
Still
months.
a poly boy at heart, but he's become a big old coastal elite since we started
Hey,
this.
as long as he can spread the good word at St. Paul.
I also had another one of those. You're no longer a teenager. I spoke with I spoke with Quinn Hughes of Michigan, who's a guy who's going to be like a top 5 draft pick this year. And was talking about his year, and he goes in and he says the line of age is just a number, as I'm sure you know. And I'm like thinking to myself, I'm like, is that a shot at me being old or
Quinn Hughes?
I was like, it's true. And then I also thought about it afterwards. I'm like, well, yeah, of course I know it's a number. I work with Drew every week.
Yeah.
You should have said, "Don't you know who I am? I work at the Athletic."
I'm the Athletics, Nate Wells.
Don't you know who I am? I'm Nate Wells of the Athletic.
And Hughes would have been like, I read you at zone coverage. I didn't even know you were there.
Oh, it's just cheap shot fest right now. I love this. This is
how we're in.
Great.
Yeah, we're in the year with just cheap shots, which is perfect. Yeah. So Tom,
Fitting.
Yeah.
What's new on the I know there's something new on the zone coverage.
We are launching a membership model. You don't have to pay for most most of the content on the site, especially for Gopher people specifically, will make it pretty clear what's in, what's out. Generally speaking, this is more an opportunity for us to figure out who's reading the site, try to get the content to you in a more efficient manner. We probably will have events, including hopefully for the Gophers next year. We're trying to get in with some bars and stuff. And at the end of the day, we want this to be something you want to be part of. We're not trying to shoo you out. We enjoy your patronage.
Yeah, see everybody. Tom's a man of the people.
I am a man of the people.
Yes.
The podcast will always be free. We may add a video component, not promising, but we're trying to do that. And so that always will be free in terms of the content. We'll make it very clear if it's not. And we appreciate you reading us, reading Nate at The Athletic, and Joseph at the Twins Daily. Or not Twins Daily, Minnesota
Twins
Daily.
Daily?
No. I had to
I'd be like, shoot. I don't remember when I started working.
Yeah, Minnesota
John
Daily.
Martis comes in and is like, no. He's like, Tom, I already saved you once this week. Once this month.
You're like, I must be doing a pretty good job of what I am doing to cover baseball, even though I've never covered baseball.
Yeah.
There you go.
There's a reference from another podcast too.
Yep. And otherwise, fine podcast.
Yeah, the last reference. Listen to the Jazz and the Goalie that I was on. But yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Gopher State. My writing, I did a couple things for the Frozen Four for The Athletic, both the Minnesota one and our Dallas site. I wrote on some of the Dallas Stars prospects, Joe Ciccone and Riley Tufte.
There's a few NHL and college hockey pipelines.
Yeah, there are quite a few there.
To take certain kinds of players.
So that was kind of a cool thing to do. You can follow me on Facebook. It's Nate Wells Writes Hockey. I put all these podcasts. I put all my writing there. I put all my Gopher writing at the gopherhockeyblog.blogspot.com. I've been on several radio stations regular this year. WCCO being the big one.
He groans at radio stations and not The Athletic.
I know it's coming. I know it's coming.
Oh, he already said it. He already said it.
Oh, damn it.
Yeah, you missed it, Tom. Gosh, he's like 0 for 5 today.
Yeah. But
wait.
I'm not Drew Stanton, but Giancarlo Stanton.
No, I was thinking Logan Morrison.
Lomo, Sano striking out. Oh, yeah, we got a lot of. It's cold, man. It's cold out there. Anyways, go on.
Yeah.
So a lot of stuff you can find me on, and for everyone who's been listening this year, our thanks. That.
Thanks to everyone for listening, sharing us, interacting with us, sending us questions.
Yes, yeah.
That's the best part of it.
Exactly. And we enjoy doing this. So we will not be back next week. I think we're going to try to do at least
when news
plan
breaks.
Right now is when
we're
news
trying
breaks.
To get behind the news.
Yeah. So when news comes up or whatever, I think we're going to kind of occasionally do this over the summer and off season.
At some point, we will transition this over to its own feed.
Yes.
And I promise Declan not only will be producing this show, but multiple shows across the network. We're big fans of Declan Goff. So if you don't like my goofy. Yeah. I said we. Us.
I know.
Oh, we're getting the band back together.
We're getting the band back together.
Yeah. So Declan's going to be helping us out, and so if you don't like my goofiness, you only have to deal with it a little bit.
Nah, Tom, we love your goofiness.
All right. So for Drew, for Tom, I am Nate. Until next time we record, we'll see you at the rink.